planes we'll cover. Oh, that is a number 8, and that is a number 1. So we will cover the uses from this one to this one. The next plane you move into is the jack plane, which is a number 5. This one's got a corrugated sole on it, and various ideas why they're called jack planes. I said the other week, possibly because they're a jack of all trades, you can use them for everything, but doing some research during the week, I came up with what they are is actually a shortened foreplane. Now, this I'll talk about later on. This is a number 6, and it's classed as a foreplane. And you'll see that it's shorter by a fair bit from the foreplane. Now, the idea being the foreplane was the one you did before you used any other plane. So if you had rough sawn timber or something like that and you had to get into it before you could shoot it, make it straight and smooth it, you would use the foreplane to get rid of all the fur and fibres in the timber. The jack came into it because in carpentry terms, this is what I read, in carpentry terms, jack meant shortened. So you've got a jack stud and a jack hip joint and jack joist and something like that. It's a joist or a stud or a bearer that has been cut off. So the jack plane was a foreplane that was cut off, and they called it a jack plane. I don't find much use for it in the shed myself. The corrugations on the bottom, you see there, they are actually there to reduce friction. In Australia, spotted gum, brush box isn't so bad, spotted gum, tallow wood, stuff like that, that's a bit resinous and sticky. If you use that, and if you look at the corrugations, they're not that deep, but it actually reduces the surface area of the sole by about 50%. Theory being, you're not pushing as hard when you're cleaning your timber up. You'll find corrugated planes, I think I've seen them from 2 through to 8, but I don't use them that much. Because the reason I don't like them is I like having my finger guiding me, and when I've got the corrugations, no, it doesn't work for me. So anyway, that's a jack plane, and that's a 5. I'll show you another one in a little bit, which is a bit different. The 5.5, I think honestly, if you were going to do general woodworking, a bit of furniture making, and you could only afford a couple of planes, that's what I'd be getting. I'd be getting a block plane and a 5.5. With that, you can do most things. Then I'd get a 3. But this is also considered a jack plane. It's a 5.5. It's shorter than a foreplane, but it has the full width of the foreplane. And to me, this is a great all-rounder. It's not that heavy to hold. You can flatten boards with it, you can dress boards with it, and I've actually used it as a smoothing plane. If you're going to use it as a smoothing plane, a little trick is, on these corners of the blade, just round them over. Because if you round them over, this is the bit I'm talking about here, instead of having those square, if you round them over, you don't get what you call tram tracks, which is when you're plane, you get 2 tracks either end of the blade, so that eliminates that. So that's a jack plane. And then we move on to a jointer, or I call them shooting planes. But this is for jointing boards. The idea of the longer plane is if you've got a short plane, such as the number 3, we use the lie-nielsen, and if this board was like that, this plane would follow and I'd never get it straight. Whereas with a number 7 or a number 8, if that's got undulations in it, this sole is long enough that it can bridge all the peaks, and I'll just be planing peaks until I come down to the valleys, and then I'll get it straight. And that's the idea of this, is to, you can hear a little bit of hit and miss there actually. So it's obviously not dead straight. It's not until you get the full hiss of the blade all the way down that you know it's straight. So once you've been doing it for a while, when you start and you hear hit and miss, okay, there's a little bit in the middle there, it's not working. If you look at that shaving, that's pretty well the same width all the way through, except for the last little bit. And that suggests to me I haven't got it square yet. So we'll give it one more shot along there. Okay, if I look at that, that's going to be, it's pretty bony timber, but it's got that same width all the way through, so then I know that is straight. So that's what a shooting plane's for. So they're your main planes, and then in between those you've got others. Do similar things. This massive behemoth is an absolute gorgeous number 8. It is wider and longer than a number 7 and a lot heavier, and it does the same job as a number 7 but on bigger timber. Or if I've got a really gnarly bit of timber and I need the weight, I'll use this one. This is a lie-nielsen. It is actually a pound heavier than the Stanleys. We checked that one day. Now this is a number 6. Traditionally, this was the 4 plane. And again, if you put it next to the number 7, you can see it's shorter than the number 7. But the width of the blades is the same. So that was a 4 plane. I like these, and if I get people slight of stature that don't have possibly the upper body strength to handle a number 7, I highly recommend they get a number 6. And it will do the same job as a jointer. Now we've got this thing here is another one of my favourites. This one's called a junior jack. This is a 5 1/4, and it is the width of a number 3, but is just a bit longer than the number 4. And it is a very, very useful plane. As far as I know, the only people that are currently making these is Veritas, and you can pick them up on auction sites. They're going for about anywhere from $100 to $200. But they are a very nice plane. You can use them as a smoothie, you can use them as a jointer. If you're going to get into box making, they're a very handy plane to have as well. Then we go to the ones that really, number 1 as you saw, where did that go? And a number 2. Now these really don't fit the bill anymore. They're still made, I believe. I know lie-nielsen make a number 1. I'm not sure if they make a number 2. In box making, they're fantastic. This one I use in box making too. It's a number 2, would be classed as a smoother, I guess. The research I've done on the number 1s, no one can give me a definitive answer on what they actually are for, but it's a sweet little plane to have. I use that in box making as well. So there you go. That's the bench planes from number 1 to number 8, with all points in between, but the most common ones you'll find now is, well actually, I doubt if you've, I don't think 3's so common, but 3 to me is much more use than a number 4. So if I had my choice, I'd have a block plane for sure, a number 3, a 5 1/2, and a 7, and I'd be happy with that. Anyway, that's it. Any questions?